Well, this morning, to have this conversation with us about the continued border closure, of course, we have heard the president say over and over again, well, I mean, just in the recent past that, hey, it's about time we began to consider reopening the borders again because of the effect so far on the Nigerian economy. This is where we are now, but we do not have a specific date yet as to when the borders will be closed. And there are so many conversations around this. Of course, you listening to the CBN president just now, you say that one of the things that they expected the border closure will achieve is to facilitate increased or improved patronage of our products and services in Nigeria. This is what we have at this time, but let's speak with a couple of gentlemen who will be able to speak to us on how far so far and what their expectations are about the reopening of the borders. Onalo Akwa joins us from Nasarawa State virtually. He is the Director General, Poultry Farmers Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time. He joins us along with Adeyemi Adeniji, who is agro-entrepreneur and an exporter, Chief Executive Officer of Starling Global and Ideal Limited. He is an exporter of cocoa and cashew. He joins us from Lekki, also virtually. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this morning. Let me begin with you, Mr. Akpa. Of course, it's in the news, so many things that a number of your members have said about the effect of this whole conversation about the border closure on your business. How has it helped or harmed your business and that of your members? Just told them that we're here to have Mr. Akpa, but let's go to Mr. Adeniji. Well, you are in the business of importing and exporting of cocoa and cashew, and you are an agricultural entrepreneur. What's your take on this border closure and the fact that it has lasted this long?
Well, good morning. I think it's just to give us another impression about what the policymakers have probably been doing to us since God knows when. It is another policy somersault. What has changed? Nothing. What we have only experienced is another action, which will take us a longer time before we'll be able to get back there. For example, look at the port. All normal goods that are normally supposed to go on the roads, even when the roads are bad, linking other West African countries, were stopped just because people felt people are dumping goods on Nigeria. Has anything changed? Nothing. People still smuggle all these goods. The port is now congested because some of these goods that are supposed to go on the road are now being transported to our port. That is already very terrible. Unfortunately for us, the port itself, we have only one that is functional, maybe, or now just coming up. And the volume of containers coming to Nigeria is serious. And the rent takers, that's the owners of the port, have taken advantage to make Nigeria poorer than what they were before the closure. For example, what was the price of a bag of rice before the closure of the border? What is it today? So everything has gone very terribly. And I cannot see the positive effect of the border closure. If the government has problems with people bringing in goods, we have our land borders. It will surprise you that some cars that even come in through Nigerian ports will get out, and you still see custom on the roads looking for them. So something fundamental is wrong with our policy and the policymakers.
Well, Mr. Adeniji, you would also recall that on a number of occasions we've heard the president and some of his officials also say that a core reason for closing the borders at the land borders in particular at this time is to, at least as much as possible, control the inflow of small arms that have been responsible for incessant acts of banditry and other forms of criminality. Don't you think that's in any way been played out?
Well, I'm shocked that you are even saying this. Don't you see, as it's become better, the banditry has increased. Nobody is safe in this country again. You can't go on the road. You can't go anywhere. Have you forgotten so many people that were kidnapped and they will have to pay themselves? It's even getting worse in every part of the country, not only in the north again. It's everywhere. So small harms are here with us. What have we done to stop that? Nothing. Look, I want to give an example. Today, I buy cocoa from Cross River State. Cocoa still comes in from Cameroon into Nigerian border and they cross. There are so many porous borders that all these things can come in through. It's just terrible political mistake and policy somersault. And if it's not quickly reversed, it's going to get the country deeper into recession. Because you need to trade. Unfortunately, we signed the
Take an
African
alternate
Continental.
opinion, Mr. Adeniji, on this matter. I understand that Mr. Onalo Akwa has just joined us. He is the Director General, Poultry Farmers Association of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Akwa. Well, this continued border closure is raising a lot of concerns in some quarters. Are you also as concerned?
Well, I am also as concerned as the entire poultry farmers in this country. In the last few months that the border had been closed, I think there have been some mixed positive and negative benefits to the border closure. As a poultry farmer and as an administrator of poultry industry in this country, it has been a mixed feeling. A mixed feeling in the sense that Nigeria is a founding member of ECOWAS, and part of the protocol and treaty of the Economic Community of West African States is free movement of goods and services within the West African sub-regions. And what actually led to the closure of the border has been the other nations surrounding us undermining the territorial integrity and then the trade integrity of this country. I think that is the first thing that led to the closure of the border by Mr. President. And we've had some positive and negative impacts of the border closure. I will speak from the perspective of the poultry farming in this country. Before the closure of the border, there had been a lot of smuggling of poultry and poultry products into this country, which actually was negatively affecting the poultry industry. Yes, although the protocol says there should be free movement of goods and services into this country, but it's not to undermine the economy of each of the country in the West African sub-region. Particularly, we've had a case whereby smuggling of poultry products, especially frozen chicken, into Nigeria had actually wanted to shut down the meat industry of this country. And when we had the border closure, I think the poultry industry in Nigeria has actually grown exponentially in the last few months. To say that, we also look at the other aspect of it. Today, every poultry farmer operating in this country is operating at a loss because the cost of production has actually gone up. We've now been able our local production of maize has never been able to actually meet the demand of the economy. A lot of protagonists of trade that says, look, there is no need for us to bring in maize. Yes, there's no need for us to bring in maize. We have the arable land, we have the potential, we have everything to produce maize. Today, the price of maize is on the rooftop. Now, the price of soya, which is the only basic plant protein source for production of poultry, is on the rooftop. But we are now looking at it and look, if the government in their wisdom says they were going to close the border, and they actually did close the border, and today they say they want to look at reopening the border. Now, with mixed feelings, we also say they should open the border, because if you open the border and you are able to control the smuggling that has actually taken over the economy, ruining our economy, then we should be able to do proper policing of the porous borders that we have. Today, I'm afraid that if you open the borders like it has been done, between the southern part of this country and then the other parts of the country, then I'm afraid that unwholesome poultry products with broken down cold chain value will flood into this market again. And then this will put a lot of poultry farmers into under pressure. A lot of people, almost 90% of the people operating in the poultry industry in Nigeria, took their money from the bank in form of loans. And then if you now say, okay, poultry products coming from Europe, coming from South America, coming from America, North America, into this country, although it is restricted, but people smuggle most of them. And then a lot of pressure is going to bear. And then the poultry industry that presently employs between 15 to 20 million Nigerians in direct and indirect employment, then unemployment will be eroded. And then a lot of people will be thrown back into the unemployment market. And then that is to say that the insecurity we are having today will also be increased. But on the other hand, if you open the border and then there's a proper policing of what comes into this country legally based on our fiscal policies and what does not come in otherwise, then we'll be able to also do the free trade, like bringing alternative plant protein source like granite cake from Cameroon, from Chad, onto this country, but let it be legitimate. But the kind of a situation whereby smuggling has taken over the whole place and then undermining the critical sector of the economy like the poultry is what we're against it. Because we have it on record and it is in our statistics that over 1 million metric tons of frozen chicken comes into this country illegally through smuggling. So what do we do to police it actually? To make sure that the local investment and people's money does not go down into the drain. That is our quarrel. But
Mr. Adeniji,
legitimate trade. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Pardon me. Mr. Adeniji believes that this border closure is a policy somersault. I just want to get your opinion on that. Do you agree with him?
You see, policy is not a cast and iron issue. You see, when you look at your policy and you look at your operational mechanism, what is actually happening, then based on that, you can take decisions that is to protect your economy, decisions that has to protect the integrity of even the policy we are saying. Policy somersault is also has to do with human face. Now, if you now says, because the ECOWAS treaty says free movement of goods and services, and then you allow your country to be used as a route to dumping products on the other economy, you are undermining the integrity and then the sovereignty of that country. So invariably, you are putting that country at a jeopardy. So policy is not a cast and iron issue. Policy
so you don't think
has to be looked up to at every particular time.
So you don't think this is a policy somersault?
Your policy based on what is prevailing.
So you don't think
it's not a policy somersault because I'm a policy person.
Right.
You see, you have to look at your policy. How does it affect you as a person? How does it affect the generality of the people you govern? And then you change it at any particular point in time.
Let's speak with Mr. Adeniji. Well, you've said, yeah, this is a policy somersault, or Mr. Akpa believes that it isn't. But your business specifically now, the government said this was meant to ensure self-sufficiency in food production. You produce food, as it were. You're a farmer in that regard, you export. And the question will be, during that border closure, was there any benefit whatsoever to your business?
Is it in terms of the reopening of the border or the closure of the border?
During the period which the border remained closed, was there any benefit whatsoever to your business?
Yeah, there were a lot of benefits. I will tell you categorically that within the period of the border closure, the poultry industry grew by almost 17%. Because there is strong market.
Mr. Akpa, forgive me.
Cost of production, which is not
Mr. Akpa, forgive me. I actually thought it was Mr. Adeniji speaking. Apparently, you sounded like... But that question is for Mr. Adeniji. You get to respond to that. But let's take on Mr. Adeniji first.
Thank you.
Well, I'm even more surprised that Mr. Akpa is saying that there was the closure of the border has really made the poultry farm becoming better. That is not true. What's the price of the day-old chick today? What's the price of the food to give to these birds? What I think the government and everybody that is a participant in this Nigerian economy should be looking at is, one, today we have signed an agreement with African Intercontinental Free Trade agreement, this is going to, whether we like it or not, we are going to open our borders. What we should be looking at is how do we export more of these things to other West African or African countries. We should increase our production. We should increase our capacity so that we're not going to be left behind in the free trade agreement we have signed. Today, if we think we want to be protecting, we want to protect our industry by closing the borders, at the end of the day, and we need to implement this agreement, we are going to be in trouble. It has not added any value. Sincerely, everything has gone up. The price of chicken, are we able to produce enough chicken for this country, even when the border are closed? Not at all. These people still smuggle this frozen chicken through different means. Don't you see contraband rice or still in the market? This chicken, we're only being very economical with the truth. These things are still coming to this country. What we need to do is, as a country, we need a policy, immediate, middle-term, long-term policies that will bring a lot of entrepreneurs from this country to produce more with our population. We can dominate all the West African countries, even if it's only to send all our goods to them, our food, because we have comparative advantage, competitive advantage over every other West African countries because of our population.
You know, Mr. Adeniji, I want to explore your experience really during this border closure. I think it will be important to hear firsthand from you the kind of experience you had during this border closure. As an exporter, did you have to export through the land border or through the ports?
Well, naturally, I don't even go through the land, but it has caused a lot of trouble today. I think in the news report you just read this morning, I had the issue of the maritime people want to go on strike. The port is a mess. It's even more terrible now. If anybody needs to go to Apapa, Chinese television, you understand it. We are in a big mess. We're only trying to cover and don't want to offend people. The trouble is getting worse. The port is bad. The port is terrible. The policies are very detrimental to the growth of businesses in this country. When you go to the port today, you cannot even pass. They say they are opening road and closing it. It has given room for corruption. So many people are taking money on that road. What we normally use 60,000 naira to take a container of cocoa from Oshodi to Apapa now costs 500,000 naira. If you go on batch, the entire water system is blocked. So has not added any value. It has rather dragged us back for another 10 years. So
the farmers, from the farmers you get the cocoa from, did they experience increased production? Did it bring down the cost?
When you put water on the head, it goes down to the toe. Everybody is feeling it. You see, the problem is, what was the price of these things before this border closure? How much expensive do you put to ship it out? If ordinarily you need to put 65,000 for one container to get to the port and get out, and you are now spending 500,000 to do it, definitely it will affect the farmers. It's the buying cost that will be affected, and most of the countries in the world where we compete, like Ivory Coast and Ghana, for our products, people go to them to buy from them than from us, because when you sign a contract, the other hand, that's the receiver, is not sure of when they will get the goods, because they know that your port is a problem. It's problematic. I can share you so many of these letters coming from Netherlands, from Amsterdam, from United States of America doesn't want to buy our cocoa now because they believe that the transit period is about 30 days. Your containers will spend another 2 months at the port before they go. And this is food. They cannot wait. So in the long run, it is a terrible mistake, a very unfortunate policy somersault on the close of the borders. Because ordinarily, the port is already congested.
Well, Mr. Adeniji, is this a function of the border? Because I'm talking about the ports now. Is it a function of the border closure, or something that has been with us for a while, which the Office of the Vice President had an assignment to clear over time? You would know, of course, that the issue of the congestion of the ports isn't as a result of the border closure. As a matter of fact, when we had this interview with the managing director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, she made it clear to us that the border closure hasn't significantly affected their operations or given them more responsibilities in any way. So that argument, might not be, there so much, because I believe that she should have all of the facts of that. The congestion of the ports is definitely a concern, no doubt about that. I don't know. Maybe if you want to ask the port operators, they might say differently.
No, that's not true. Now, all the goods that are coming through Cotonou have not been able to come in through the road. They have to get to Cotonou. They will need to be loaded again, and they will transfer them to the Nigerian port that is already congested. If anybody is saying it does not have any negative impact on it, the bloody closure has not had any negative impact, the person is being economical with the truth. Because all these goods that are supposed to go on the road are also being loaded back and put to Nigeria. So it has increased the congestion. The waiting period before, when the port was terrible, was about 21 days.
Part of the plan, now, I believe that if you listen to the central bank governor, my apologies, Mr. Adeniji, let me take this to Mr. Akpa. Part of the plan for the border closure, or hopes of government, I believe, for the border closure was that, look, maybe if we do not import some of these things, capacity to produce would increase. They cite the examples of when some items were banned from coming into Nigeria, such as fruit juice and the rest of them. Even these poultry products that we're talking about, they got on that list of products that are banned from being imported into the country. This current border closure we have, Mr. Akpa, how significantly has it improved or increased the capacity of your members to produce? Because if you listen to Mr. Adeniji, the facts are there, and you may want to validate or contradict it, that we do not still have enough poultry products in the country. Consequently, importing some of them might be a good way to balance the demand that people have for these products. So how significantly has this border closure helped to increase the capacity of your members to produce?
Well, I want us to separate one thing from the other. If we want to look at the gamut of our policies as a country, we need to look at the entire gamut of our policies, both monetary and fiscal policy. If we want to look at the policy of the border closure, which was done last year, vis-a-vis the effect, positive or negative, let's talk about it. Mr. Adeyemi has spoken, and I agree in totality with him. But the congestion in the port, I also do international business. The congestion in the port, to me, is not directly as a result of the border closure. Now, he says, yes, that the cost of poultry products has risen. The cost of poultry products has risen, possibly not because, and I'll tell you, not because of the border closure. The cost of poultry products has risen because of a lot of problems. 70 to 75% of the cost of production of poultry is basically cereals, is maize and soya. Now, because of the insecurity in the country, a lot of farmers have now been able to go to the farm. So the prices of maize at the harvest period like we are having, traditionally by this time last year, the price of maize was going at 87,000 per metric ton. Today, the price of maize is going as much as 150. This is harvest period. The price of soya, for example, by this time last year, soya meal was 105,000 per metric ton. Today, soya is going as much as 225,000 metric tons. Now, if you buy your soya and your maize, which constitutes 75 to 80% of your cost of production, and then you produce, you have to look at the metrics of your cost of production vis-a-vis what you sell out. So to me, we don't import maize from the neighboring countries into Nigeria. Neither do we import soya. But what I'm trying to say is that, look, let us look at the gamut of our policy. What is actually happening? If I produce 1 kilogram of chicken at 1,200, I can't sell at 1,200. I need to sell at 1,500. Now, the issue of allowing things to come in. Nigeria is one of the biggest countries, is the biggest country and the biggest economy in Africa. Now, it is at our advantage to produce competitively and then export to the countries in West Africa. But let us look at our policy from lending to provision of this infrastructure to subsidy. There is nowhere in the world that agriculture is never subsidized. But in our country,
Mr.
they say free
Akpa,
market
well, you
economy.
have
They say,
cited some
liberalization.
issues around
So,
the matter of your production capacity. Just one moment, but I would need you to speak to. And so, of course, you have explained the reason why production has been hampered or hindered one way or another. But we'll take this further when we return from this break. Gentlemen, do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Mr. Akpa, going by some of the arguments that you have thrown forward about the issues raised so far, it would seem like, as far as you're concerned, we didn't quite think through everything before we closed the borders. Well, on the one hand, government wanted perhaps to encourage an increased local production of some of the things that we import. But at the same time, looking at some of the other issues that you have raised, this insecurity, harvest timetable, harvest calendar, COVID-19, and so many other issues, those things weren't quite factored in and consequently have affected, the production, and is perhaps where you are now not giving us the full value for which the borders were closed. Going forward now, what should we be doing? You've talked about a holistic look at all of our policies so that they are all speaking in the same direction. What should we be looking at now, looking at the entire gamut?
Well, thank you. First, let me place it on record that the poultry industry in Nigeria has the capacity to produce for national need, and then to export to the other countries in West Africa in the first instance, and then to the other parts of the world. Secondly, you see, I said it in this forum on your channel the other time, that we need to critically engage ourselves, both as policymakers and as stakeholders in the agricultural industry. I cannot have my people doing a different thing outside what the maize association is doing, what the soya people are doing. So we need to constantly engage ourselves. And by the time we constantly engage ourselves, we will now be able to know what is our strength and what are our weaknesses. Two, and then having understood our strength and our weaknesses, how can we fill in the gap to have a win-win situation? To me, that has been what I've been advocating. Today, if we are able to look at the entire policy, like I have said, and then now says, okay, like the ease of doing business. The ease of doing business should have something to do with the congestion in the port. Now, today, if we are to trade within ourselves as West African countries, we stand to have a lot of comparative advantage. Today, we are looking for plant protein source, and then soya is expensive. There should be other alternative. What is the other alternative? The other alternative is groundnut cake. What is the crushing capacity? What is the groundnut production in this country right away? And then what can we crush to have sufficient groundnut to alternate for soya? So if you go to Chad, for example, the crushes a lot of groundnut. So if we are able, that is not even, Chad is not even within West Africa, it's in Central Africa. But since we are African countries and we're neighbors to ourselves, now with sincerity of purpose at all angles of our operations, then we could do transparent business. I cannot see a reason why Benin Republic port will be used as a dumping port for poultry products in Nigeria. That is the quarrel. So, like I have said, border closure and non-border closure is never responsible for the entire trouble at the ports. Now, if border is closed, we cannot do some relaxed businesses. But if border is closed, the essence of the border closure is to protect the local economy. Now, today, 25 million people are engaged directly and indirectly in poultry production. Now, if you now say, okay, bring in the entire 1.5 to 2 million metric tons of chicken we produce on an annual basis, then you allow Benin to be used as a dumping ground for Nigeria. And then you know that almost 5 to 10 million people will go out of employment. So that is the problem. So we need to have a synergy, the synergy of working together, and that is completely lacking in this country. We are not working together. Everybody is doing as if at all we are operating from different colonies. We are not operating from different colonies, neither from different countries. We are one. We have the same objective, and the same objective calls that we must come together, constantly engage ourselves.
Mr. Just one moment, Mr.
What is happening?
Just one moment.
Yes.
When you say we are not working together, what categories of people are you looking at that should be working together? You've talked about the maize farmers, you've talked about soya, people who deal in soya beans and all of that. What categories of people should be working together? Is it just those three, poultry producers, maize producers and soya, or there are other people that should come in the value stream?
The people in government, who don't do policy, we contribute to policy. But the people in government which will have constant engagement with the people at the private sector, the people in the organized private sectors.
Okay.
I will give you an example, like the Poultry Association of Nigeria.
All right.
What affects poultry production in this country can never be known by the person at the cause of his office, other than myself and then the people on the fields. So we are not strangers to ourselves. We should have cordial relationship in such a way that we can talk and then believe that we are all working for the Nigerian project. Not that you stay within the cause of your office, you don't know how it affects me, and then you sit down there, you shun our policies. Oh, this does not work, this work. And then it is causing a lot of trouble. Like you said, the cost of, I'll give you an example of the interface that we're actually not having. Part of what is responsible for the high cost of production is tariff. Today, if you want to bring in agricultural products, the fiscal policy says agricultural products are zero duty. But if you bring any agricultural product into any of the ports in Nigeria today, they charge you duty. Customs charges you duty. Customs should be able to know that this is an agricultural machinery. Customs should be able to know that this is an agricultural equipment. But customs still charges you duty. I will tell you, for micro ingredients, less than 10% of what we use in the production of feed, which is basically what sustains the poultry production, comes in from abroad. Lysine, methionine, toxin binders, vaccines, and some medications. Now, customs is still charging tariff on them, while the fiscal policy says they are zero duty. So now, what is wrong for us sitting down with customs and the people in the fiscal policy department of the Ministry of Budget and National Planning to sit down? Let's define critically this. What does the law say? It's not because you have a target to generate revenue, you start charging people arbitrarily. So this connection is not there. There's a complete disconnection. And then customs say you have a target. If you have a target, you go against the law that even also establishes you. Now somebody stays in the office, he says this has been removed.
All right, Mr. Akwa. That point is taken. Let me take this to Mr. Adeniji. Just one moment. Let me take this back to Mr. Adeniji. We've been having this conversation, and I'm sure that you're raring to respond to some of the issues. There is something that I would like you to respond to, along with whatever other comments that you may want to pass in response to some of the issues that Mr. Akwa has raised. You deal in cocoa, and there's also been that argument out there that rather than export cocoa, isn't it possible for us to produce chocolate and the rest of them here in this country rather than export cocoa and then import chocolate at exorbitant prices? I mean, perhaps that's part of the reason why some people are saying, look, maybe we should just have it closed for a while so that we can increase local production, local capacity in production of these things. Because when you go to any shop to procure whatever brand of chocolate, it's a lot more expensive. Meanwhile, cocoa is produced here in Nigeria. What's your take on that?
Well, thank you. Mr. Apan, thank you for agreeing to what I said earlier, that we have a problem with the policymakers. I think the policymakers are too proud to sit down with the practitioners and say, look, we have a problem. How do we move forward? These hand-down policies that, okay, this is what we think is right, and they put it on you. Even if it is bitter and it's going to be a poison, they still want you to take it. I think that has been the biggest problem we have had in this country for a long time. On the cocoa side of it, or chocolate, and I want you to understand that chocolate consumption has to do with the growth of the economy. Nigeria is a very, very poor country. Chocolate or the other products from this are luxury. They are not necessities. So it is only for countries, sincerely, that has the capacity to take it. Especially if I ask today, how many homes in Nigeria can afford a Cadbury or a Milo as their breakfast? It's very few. So this is where the government should be looking at. Anybody in this country will never be happy with exporting primary products. We genuinely want to do value addition, which is the hinting, and that's the only direction we need to go. But unfortunately, we don't have structures on ground that encourage this. Where is the electricity to do it? What is the problem with the port? Imagine if somebody has processed some of these products like butter, like cake, and want to export, and you are going to be at the port for 2 months. It's a trouble. It is something that is perishable. You will not be able to do it. Do we have the infrastructure that can support this processing? No. Where is the security? Where is the finances? So we don't have it. That's what I said earlier, that the government will need to dismantle this structure and start a new one. Bringing in people, because it has never worked for the past 40 years. What we need is to sit down and say, okay, what will be our policy on this? And we have to advance it for another generation. It's not a situation whereby one government comes to power, they will destroy one policy and bring another one. You can imagine the policy on FX, on Forex. In 2016, it was 23 policies that came out, and everything went bad. Today, we have 13 or 14 exchange rates in this country, parallel, the one for school, the one for... So we have terrible policies that we need to harmonize and start to look at, okay, what is in it for this country? We need to think beyond our generation. We need to look back and look at, okay, other countries, what are they doing? We have our children and children that are coming. What are the legacies we want to give to them? Are we going to continue to do things just based on being short-sighted? Of course
You've
not.
talked about policy somersaults for a number of times, and I'm pretty sure some people will be wondering, just what policies specifically are you talking about? Well, Mr. Akwa has listed a number and has talked about the fact that, he cited the example of the customs and all of that. So when you are talking about policy somersaults, in specific terms, which ones are you talking about? Because now that the government is already considering reopening the borders, what are those things that should be put in place to ensure that we do not reverse, or revert to closing the borders again and avoid this policy somersault you're talking about?
Okay, one of it is, as a country, we should have an harmonized policy on where we want to be in the next 20 years, in the next 10 years. We have African trade agreement we have signed. What do we want to do? In specific terms, let me take cashew, for example. Nigeria produces about 150,000 tons of cashew, and we export 140,000 tons of it to Vietnam. Why can't we? And to process cashew in Nigeria has nothing to do with electricity. But the government needs to provide the enabling environment for businesses to thrive. For example, another one, we have a policy of border closure. But some people are given the opportunity to export their goods through the roads to other countries, while other people cannot bring it to the country. So that is rigging the economy for some people. So nobody should be above the order in policy making and execution. We also need to look at, for example, where do we want to be in cocoa production in the next 20 years? Nigeria used to be number 3 in the world. We are now number 7. Our volume used to be 550,000 tons in 1978. Today, we are on 250,000 tons. We are dwindling. We are going down. So we need to quickly rescue this retrogression and see, okay, what do we need to do to come back and start to fix some things? Thanks to this government, they have started doing some things, infrastructure development. like the trains, the train lines, the rail lines, the roads. They are putting a lot of efforts on that. But they also need to look at, okay, how do we solve the problem of electricity? How do we solve the problem of security? What about corruption? When we are talking, Mr. Appan was saying the cost. I mean, people will be bringing frozen fruits. I mean, food from Cotonou. That shouldn't be our problem. Our problem will be, what is the custom doing? If government has legislated, we don't want importation of this into this country. What has custom done? It's corruption. You still find them everywhere. What about imported rice? We still find them in Dalico and everywhere. The problem is not with the policy alone, it's also with implementation. We need to stamp out corruption and make sure that we have a sane, reasonable approach to our national life. As a country, we need a government and the center to have a robust policy, not play politics with our life. We need to have, sincerely,
all right, Mr.
look
Adeniji.
at everything is just upside down. So I think the most important thing
my
is
apologies,
the
Mr.
policymakers.
Adeniji. But just to be
engage
clear,
the-
Mr. Adeniji, just one moment. Just to be clear, are you in support of government reopening the borders, and how soon do you think that should be done?
It should be done today. It is important. It's long overdue because the reason for closing the border has not been achieved. What have we achieved? Nothing. So what we need to do is open the border and increase the capacity of Nigerians to build the economy, produce more, and sell to other West African countries.
Okay. Well, Mr. Onalo Akpa, what's your final take? But before you answer that one, there was something you raised the other time. You said that the conversations need to begin among stakeholders to ensure that we achieve maximally. Who, in your opinion, should take the lead in these conversations that you have suggested, given that you have also accused some government officials, especially in the Ministry of Agriculture, of not understanding the emotions or the things that you go through as poultry farmers. So this conversation you are talking about, who should be taking the lead?
Well, thank you so much. Like I have said repeatedly, and I want to put this correct. I didn't accuse the Federal Minister of Agriculture. If it is an accusation, it's to all of us. I'm accusing myself, I'm accusing you, and I'm accusing the entire Nigerians, because we need to drive the policy. Just like Mr. Demi has said, we need to have a sectoral development plan. For example, if you look at the European Union Development Plan, these people look at 50 years ahead of today. If you look at the American plan, they look at 50 years ahead of today. But every time we are involved in ad hoc planning will take us nowhere. We are talking about ourselves today. We are talking about today.
All right, Mr.
What about tomorrow? What about our children? To me, I think we should sit down.
Just one moment, Mr. Akwa. What specifically are you asking for? Do you think the borders should be opened? Yes or no? And what should we be doing within the next 24, 48, 72 hours?
The border should be open for free trade within ourselves, but the people policing the border should police the border in such a way that we will never have prohibited items coming to be dumped in our country, thereby undermining our local production capacity and potential.
All right, then. Thank you very much for your thoughts and your time this morning, gentlemen. We have been speaking with Mr. Onalo Akpa, who is the Director General, Poultry Farmers Association of Nigeria, as well as Mr. Adeniji. He's an agro-entrepreneur, an exporter, Chief Executive Officer, Starling Global and Ideal Limited. He is an exporter of cocoa and cashew. Gentlemen, both of them joined us. Mr. Akpa joined us from Nasarawa, and Mr. Adeniji joined us from Lekki in Lagos. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment on another issue. Do stay with us.